Alright, today we are doing cube root function inverses of cube roots. It's all the same steps. I'm not even going to read them. Literally, the only difference here is instead of squaring it, you're going to cube it because they're cube roots. So again, I'll say the steps, even though I said I wouldn't, just to make sure. Replace f of x with y, switch x and y, solve for y, and then in the final answer, you write it as f of negative 1x. So we see over here f of x equals the cube root of x. This is the parent function. We know what to do. Switch that with y. So y equals the cube root of x. Then we switch, I'm going to write it up here, we switch x and y. So cube root of y. Then we just solve for y. How do we do that? We have to get y by itself. The only thing in the way of y is that cube root. So we're going to cube it to get rid of it. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So x cubed equals y. So y equals x cubed, or f of negative 1x equals x cubed. And again, inverse should be the exact opposite. So in the original equation, we were cube rooting it, and in the answer, the inverse, we're cubing it, which is the opposite. Cube root and cubed are the opposite. So that's it. That's all we have to do for number one. Number one, the inverse of number one is x cubed. All right. Moving on. F of x equals the cube root of x plus 2. This time there's a little extra step, but again, nothing hard. Okay. So y equals cube root of x plus 2. All right. So from here, we need to solve for y. We need to switch x and y and then solve for y. So switch x and y, x equals the cube root of y plus 2. Now we need to solve for y. What do we do first? Obviously, subtract 2, x minus 2 equals the cube root of y. I'm going to rewrite it up here just so you can see. X minus 2 equals the cube root of y. Cube root. How do we get y by itself? The only thing in the way is the cube root. How do we get rid of that? We're going to cube it. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So x minus 2 cubed equals y. Y is by itself. So now we just rewrite it as f of negative 1x. So f of negative 1x equals x minus 2 cubed. And we're done. Again, check the original equation. The original equation was the cube root of x, and then plus 2. This time we did x minus 2 cubed. All right. Moving on. Our last one, the cube root of x minus 2. It's all under the cube root sign. So let's see what we're going to do. Switch this with y equals the cube root of x minus 2. So again, I'm going to write it up here. Switch x and y. So x equals the cube root of y minus 2. All right. From here, again, how do we get rid of this cube root? We're going to cube it. Well, what we do to one side, we must do to the other. Okay? And we're doing this first because everything is under the cube root symbol. Like in number 2, if 2 had been on the outside, we would have moved the 2 over first, then cubed it. But because it's on the inside, we need to cube it first to get rid of it. So x cubed equals y minus 2, because the cube root of something cubed, those just cancel out. So now we're left with this, but we're not done. Our last step is to add 2. So x cubed plus 2 equals y, or rewritten f of negative 1, x equals x cubed plus 2. And we're done. Those 3 problems took me 4.5 minutes. It shouldn't be that bad. But again, just to reiterate up here, the reason I cubed it immediately is because everything was under that cube root. Okay? So that's why you have to cube it immediately. If it had been x equals the cube root of y plus 2, see how that's on the outside, then first I would have subtracted 2, like in number 2. But because the 2 was a part of it, it was under the cube root, you got to cube it first. Okay, that should be common sense. All right, and that concludes cube root functions, the inverse of cube root functions. Shouldn't be too bad. There's no worksheet, so you're done.